So the first question is, what can be the process to deriving any concept, like architectural expression, form, emotion used as a concept for the initial stage, or what could be the another base aspect for the concept? How a generic concept or a unique concept can affect the development of any design?
Okay. So, as Nehal was mentioning and Poonam was mentioning about, there are different ways to arriving at a concept. So, the first, there are different ways. So I've seen a lot of architects who have either picked up on, what the site has to tell them as a designer. So like how Snehal interestingly mentioned that she would venture out on her own with a sketchbook and, probably try to absorb what the site has to say. Sometimes it is the physical or kind of tangible elements of the context. Yes. Yes, Neil. Thank
I
you.
joined twice,
Uh,
that's why. Sorry.
okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I was talking about. See, very clearly, it comes out as concept is geopardized, I think, and probably when we are studying, even when I was a student, that कॉन्सेप्ट को एक बड़ा जायंट एलिफेंट बना दिया था हमने जबकि कॉन्सेप्ट्स कैन बी रियली सिंपल दे आर what I see and what I understand today is that they can be inspirations to design or to develop your design. It starts with an idea and that is what a concept is. Like sometimes the idea is to respond to the site well. Sometimes the idea is to respond to the program. Like in the previous semester we were doing a urban studio on civic centers, so somebody wanted to interpret civic as a term and as a public space. So there can be ways and means of arriving at a concept. So they can be physical elements and they can be also non-physical or intangible elements. Like suppose there are words like probably what I can remember is transparency, or probably I would quote a concept what uh, Charles Correa adopted for Sabarmati Ashram. He simply wanted to reinterpret the village life and simple life of Mahatma Gandhi. So the concept actually is totally under the control of the designer, right? You are hired as a technician or as a design expert to give a right project to your client. So there can be one concept or there can be several concepts. The concept sometimes comes after the design. That also is possible. And most of the times it happens that way. Sometimes the concept comes in midway while you are picking up ideas, dropping off ideas. So I think as far as the concept goes, it's a very crazy animal. It can come overnight sometimes. It cannot, sometimes it doesn't come at all. So I would say in 5 years, you are exposed to different kinds of projects and how to deliver, how to develop concepts. So the urban studio talks about picking up concepts at public architecture level, right? I'm sure the other studios establish on developing concepts in other scales. So it is very subjective decision, and don't make concept a very geopardized or a big, don't be afraid of it. It can be as simple as that. Sometimes students come up with saying that playing with solids and voids is my concept. No, that is not a concept. That is not an idea. That is the translation of a concept or translation of an idea, right? So basically it's the strategy that you picked up कि मैं ये idea को solids and voids में interpret कर रहा हूँ, right? So the idea is actually the essence of your design, right? Which will continuously. So if in mid process you think that this design does not align with my original idea or my original concept, then you take a call. Do you want to change the concept or do you want to change the design, right? Or evolve your design according to a newer concept. So design is a journey that you will slowly, as you graduate and slowly get into projects, you will slowly get used to it, and you will know that there is an art of selling it to the client as well. So sometimes you also know that not all concepts work with all kind of clients. So that is something which the professional field will teach you. Yeah. Yes. If
Thank you,
anyone.
sir.
Yeah.
So my second question is directed to Poonam ma'am. In this world, in today's world, why the student of architecture should study history of architecture? How can we see their relevance in today's architecture and history? And what is the difference between referring to and copying history? And how can we refer to history?
Why do we call it history? Is my question to all of you. Why do we call it history? Because everything that has happened has given something to the society. Okay. And again, one question Sandeep sir's presentation had given, the system of education or the imparting of education. So history became history because it needed to be taught. Something became ancient history, something became prehistory, something became uh, this, something became stylistic because it needed to be taught. It had to be the same language for me, and it had to be the same language for you. So when I'm talking about a certain period in time, say I'm saying, if I'm saying ancient history and if I'm saying Paleolithic age, okay, I and Siddharth or I and Sandeep are thinking about the same thought or ideology. Okay. Similarly, when you see history of architecture, you're looking at various stylistic architecture. Now, when you are saying Hindu architecture or when you are saying Greek architecture, uh, Hindu and Greek both are working with stone. They are both working with trebation. So why is one called Greek or why is one called Hindu? Largely, the religious architecture and the philosophies, when you look at it in religious structures, or as Snehal ma'am very clearly pointed out, in memorials or monumental structures, where the philosophies are very, very clearly highlights of the culture. Yes, you see a certain sort of things reflected, but otherwise when the stylistic names were given, they are again because of imparting of education, that when I'm saying Greek architecture, this is the stylistic idea which needs to come to the mind, and when I'm saying Roman architecture, this is the stylistic idea which needs to come to the mind, because Roman arch is actually not the Roman arch, it was initially done by the Etruscans. So that is one thing. Now, why do you need to know that? See, everybody takes different things from history. As students of architecture, you need to understand the methods of construction. You don't need to invent the wheel again every time. If somebody has already done something, how can you further it? How can you fusion it? How can you use it in the purest form or the impurest form? If you even look at history as history and in history of architecture, things have evolved because of material, because of the location, because of the space, because of the idea of a person. But every time, at a certain point of time, people have looked back. If you see the European history, you have Roman, you have Greece, then you have Romanesque, which is again looking back. You have Gothic, you have Byzantine, you have XYZ happening. Again, you are coming to the Renaissance, and Renaissance is again looking back at classical architecture. Then again you are coming, and then there is a change in material, there is a change in technology, and you have this artificial material and a very fantastic material which you call concrete. But again you are moving forward with that concrete, with less is more, and then you are again looking at user dimension, that you need less, you don't need much more space, you need more space, you need less of ornamentation, you need this, you need that. And so you're going to philosophies, you're going to the site, you're going to the user group, and you're coming back to design, or you're coming back to your concept. But again, when you come during postmodernism is again trying to look at the classical styles of architecture and bring ideas into the modern architecture from the classical styles. So, and that is happening in everywhere in history. It is not only with architecture, it is with fashion, it is with ornaments, it is with everything. So, whether what you learn from it and what you take ahead is up to you. It doesn't have to be a copy, but it can be an inspiration.
Can I add to this?
Just one moment. And again, why I will connect it is with Snehal's main presentation of that last thing, the Dandi March, because I did that with one of my thesis students, and many ideas were different, but two ideas came out very, very similar. The Dandi March, because we also thought of course, represented in a very different way, but we also put that Dandi March in that. And instead of putting a separate museum, we put locational museums as a part of the landscape depicting various incidents from that Dandi March. So, that is what history does. That, okay, this is there and this is the context and this is how it should be reflected. Then the reflections might come in a very different form, but that is what my answer is. Yes, Sandeep, sorry. And yes,
Yeah.
I want to add one thing. When we talk about this history, we're actually looking at beauty. What you're looking at is ultimate representation of what mankind has made and what has survived. It's like saying that you see a beautiful girl and you turn around, I see a man and I turn around. It is exactly in the same way that when I see a beautiful building, I should, as an architect, turn around. Pretty much in the same peacock, and I look at it and I talk about its color and so many other things. So why not history, and why not what mankind has made? Similarly, I would look at machine. So it is not necessary that we are looking at history from the point of view of, but it is just pure beauty, and we are drawn. We should be also careful to figure out what will we leave behind as history, as architects.
exactly.
Because that should be the kind of idea to govern your practice, because that will put a pressure on you that no teacher will put.
Yes.
Exactly, ma'am.
That what will you leave behind as an it represents today's time. So that should be the one that stirs you on. And that is why you should look at history, because you want to better else has done.
What you take from it is up to you.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I think Snehal, I have something similar which Snehal was mentioning. That 100 years down the lane, 2020 will be a history. And if you want in 30-20 students of architecture studying the architectural style prevalent in 2020, then we better do some good work today. So the elements of history that we pick up are certainly standing testimony to that period of, or that style of architecture, which has now become kind of a point of reference for all of us, even hundreds of years since they were built. Unfortunately, if you look in the recent times, we are not building something which can be a point of historical reference. And over a period of time, you see the new projects that are coming up. They, their time span is really short. They will, very few projects will be worth remembering.
True. So
Yes,
I think that should be a driving force as students, at least.
Yes.
okay. Thank you, ma'am. Moving for the next question. Next question is directed to Sandeep, sir. As a student, this often appears as a problem to take the chosen concept to the final stage in the design process. So, as it sometimes became vague and broad. So, how can we improve, or how does one evolve the initial concept into a final stage proposal? And please comment on the process of developing the idea, design idea.
Okay, very, very interesting and relevant question. So I always tell my students that the more kind of put your thoughts on paper, the more you get confused, the more questions you are posed at, right? And so don't stop thinking. Point is, keep on thinking, keep on questioning, keep on developing new concepts, or at times looking for newer ways to design. And when you have the entire palette in front of you, that with this approach I'm getting this, with the other approach you can pick up a stark contrasting approach, and then you say that whether it works or it doesn't. So to get that judgment of what is working for you and what is not working for you as a designer, for that we need to put our thoughts on paper. Now Snehal was very elaborately, she explained the entire process. You can pick up any medium, charcoal sticks, or pick up the right medium. Sometimes block models, somebody is good at visualizing it through models, fine, but pick up any medium which allows you to express or see mind. uh, so if I dissect the brain, the ideas are somewhere in the subconscious mind, right? They come from somewhere here back of the mind, and slowly you have to bring them out and register into something permanent, or as a sketch. You have to bring that out of your head and then bring it in front of you, and then when you compare it, you will get to know which ones work better and which ones don't work better. See, it's not maths or science. It is not 1 plus 1 which will add to 2. So you have to interpret. For that you need your mind to process that. So the first skill I would advise to develop a design concept is, even if you think it is a very naive idea, it is a very crude idea or very raw format, put it on paper. At least you should know which idea to discard, right? And then there is a theory of relativity. If you have some ideas to discard, you will know what you don't want to do, right? And then you will pick up things that you want to pursue, right? So somebody, again, I'll just quote few examples. Somebody does not want to make an architectural expression that blends with the concept, the context. Fair enough, but make that illustration and keep it in front of you, that if I blend, then this is what I will get. And that will give you a kick always of what you want to achieve. And it, believe me, it need not be that your first idea is equally translated into the final design. It never happens like that. And the master architects have evolved their designs. So from the first idea to the last drawing, it has to be evolved. Every time you pick up new dimensions to your design concept, modify it, because you are little more informed. So when we start our studios, on the first day you are the least informed. 1 month down the lane you are a little bit more informed. 2 months down the lane you are a little bit more informed. So keep changing, keep evolving that initial idea. And that's how the sole advice would be, get your ideas on paper. That is where the bottleneck I observe is, you don't know how to represent. So don't worry about representations, what Snehal was mentioning. We are not judging most of the times, but the ideas you have to communicate, right? And only then they will be, you can go through a selection process, you can go through prioritizing one idea above the other, and that's how the design evolves.
I'll add to this. What I have advised the students and many a times is that there are 3 things you need to do at every stage of design, which is what, why, and how. What you would like to do or change, why, because why is very important. Unless and until you answer that why, because as Sandeep sir said, there is going to be more confusions and there are going to be more questions. Don't leave those questions. Answer those questions, and a process of elimination or the process of selection, whatever you want to call it. And then how do you want to answer those questions? So if you can do this thing, and then when you're putting things on paper, put that storyboard in front of you on a wall or whatever, and look at them together. That is, when you look at them together, something will give you an idea that whether you should select one or discard, or whether you should merge the 2 ideas and make something else. So that will come from that.
Thanks, ma'am.
Snehal, you're on mute.
Yeah. I wanted to add one thing. I remember
Ma'am
many
was saying
times
something?
students kind of keep going,
Yes.
trying to find the correct solution. So there is this great desire that there is going to be some correct solution. Let me tell you, there is no correct solution. That is the beauty of architecture. Your solution is your solution. My solution will be mine for the same thing, and Poonam's will be hers, and Sandeep's will be his. And there is no correct. In that path that I am following, you can check what I have done. If I have a lens that I have, you can check me with that lens. That is my focal point 5.6 or not. And that is the reason why for us concept becomes an element. If you know that, you will be able to check it with that. And it, as Sandeep was saying, it doesn't have to emerge in the first day, second day, fifth day, seventh day. It can happen on the last day. It doesn't matter. Things can fall into place whenever. That is all right. You have to teacher to allow
Thank
you
you,
to
ma'am.
do that.
So next question is directed to again Sandeep sir and Poonam ma'am. The concept behind the design is a very large process and varies from a very programmatic to an intangible approach. So what type of concept to apply where and how these two approaches can be combined and justified? Maureen, please turn off.
Again, through these discussions, there are ways which you will also learn in your way, that everybody will have a different way of approaching idea or in concept. Somebody will take up the program and look at the whole program and say, okay, this is the area requirement, this is what it is, and this is how I will go ahead. As a first thought. Or there might be parallel thoughts in a mind that, okay, like when I do it with a parallel thought. Okay, this is my site and this is how I'm going to look at the site. This is my program and this is how I'm going to look at the program. These are my ideologies or philosophies which I come from, whatever experience I have. I put it on a study board parallelly, and then I try and see how all the three can be merged or not merged. Somebody will look at only the intangible, try and put a lot of philosophies, and then design a certain idea and put it on paper. It also depends on for whom or for what I am designing. Say if because I have done some religious institutions and all, and if I am doing for that religious institution, my first and foremost thought comes from the intangible. That what are the philosophies, because there that in the depiction of that philosophy or that institution or the ideologies of their institution is coming foremost. Then the functions part of which is their requirement, that this is something which so that the programmatic. Okay. And then I'm looking at the site, that how is the site going to help me look at my ideologies and look at my programmatic requirement and bring that pragmatic and intangible together for something which is I won't call it right, but which is appropriate. Because what, according to me, what I feel is in architecture, nothing is wrong. I mean, it is, as Nihal ma'am said, it is my idea, it might be your idea. So nothing would be wrong, but not everything is right.
Can we drop the ma'am?
Sorry.
Thank you.
That is what my idea is. Sandeep, if you want to add something, just give me a moment.
I think well covered. I think
Just
that
give
should
me a
be
moment. I'll be back.
Thank you, ma'am. Hope the questioner has got the answer. So next question is again directed to Poonam ma'am. We at presently majorly just focus on physical objects as an inspiration. So it would be very helpful if you can comment how we can evolve concept basis on intangible aspects rather than physical.
See, the one thing is that what do you mean as an intangible aspect? In language, a word, the way Sandeep was explaining, that if you take transparency, now transparency is an intangible aspect. How are you going to explore that in your design? Are you going to explore it through materials? Are you going to explore it through use of space, or are you going to use it through use of elements, or not using elements? That is something which you will have to decide. So that is again, because with my background in conservation, I look back, and a lot of things I look back in history. When you're looking at temple architecture, say, and if you're looking at temple architecture, and I'm studying in detail the philosophies and histories and the geometries in temple architecture, the geometries which are coming from the Vastu Purusha and then turning into grids, and those grids turning into temples. Now that grid need not turn into a temple, it can turn into a skyscraper for all I care. So what I am taking from that is the understanding of that philosophy, which is very, very organized, which is very, very symmetric, which is very, very giving me an understanding of, without the modern technologies, of how I can create through geometries something so high and something so balanced, which gives me a certain kind of a form, and then I go ahead and use it with concrete or steel, and I use it for skyscrapers. So the idea is coming from the philosophy of balance, from the philosophy of Hinduism as being very steady, very poised, which is getting transformed into geometries of grids, and that grids are then getting transformed into skyscrapers. So the idea is coming from a very, very intangible aspect to a very, very philosophical aspect, and then getting transformed into architecture, which is, one is a direct representation of the philosophies, the other is something which has come out from those philosophies. So that is what
I think to add to what Poonam is saying, suppose if we all saw Snehal's presentation and the projects that she presented. So for this is my reading, that probably in the earthquake memorial, the intangible reference to idea or concept was the memory of those children, the the hope that it brings, right? The the childlike vibes, or what you say, the vibrancy of that space, so they were all intangible ideas. They then, ma'am, kind of Snehal and team was looking at how to translate that intangible idea of 400 young children, and commemorating something which happened in the history, and then pick up something into a more tangible concrete. So she could pick up those farakadis, she could pick up those constellations on the same day. Unless you have that intangible idea, I don't think that tangible idea would have come out so well. So just to share those thoughts.
no, and as architects, you have to understand that at the end of the day, you have to put it into some sort of a physical form. So when you're looking at intangible, you get so driven by the social aspects. We have to at one stage understand we are not activists, but we are trying through architecture to get that feeling, that form, that intangible architect put into the physical form, so that it can evoke another set of feelings, whoever is looking at it. Now that feeling, whoever is looking at it, belongs to that person. You can try to the maximum that you have put the same idea of what you had learned or what you had thought, but the idea of feeling which is of an individual is the right of an individual. So you try to the maximum as an architect of what you are looking at, the feelings, and putting the same feelings in the physical form, but the interpreter is going to interpret to a certain level according to his or her own thought.
Thanks, ma'am. The next question is directed to Sandeep sir. In condition where we are supposed to design a multi-purpose or a multi-story building, which does not have any fixed program, and programs may differ on each floor. In this condition, how to start thinking about designing? Sir, you are on mute. Sir, you are on mute.
Sorry, happens. So So as a as an architect or designer for such kind of projects which has multiple users, multiple programs in one architectural element or in one building, probably that is the time when at least I what I would do is I will put everything in one format. I mean, I would put uh, each user each users, I will put requirements, what are their needs, what are their aspirations, right? So and then when I put every user group, every program in front of me, that is when I'll have to go through a process of clubbing things, prioritizing things, right? Or kind of dealing with all the user groups in a combined or a collective uh, programmatic element or segregated programs, right? So as a designer, I'll have to do all this filtering process so that the entire program gets channelized into boxes first, right? That this user group needs this, or this is their aspiration. Then we see how they club between user groups, right? And then as a designer, I would say that, okay, can I mix them or can I not mix them? Then that is the decision that I need to make. And then first priority will be, as a designer, if you ask me, then looking at the social aspects, why not try to mix them, right? And then if it really works, like suppose I cannot mix them, right? Then you segregate across levels or across horizontally, right? So that is the outcome of your understanding. But first you have to process the user groups, process their needs, right? Process the program itself, interpret the program, right? Then go with the site, that what are the strengths that the site is offering. If it's a huge site and you can segregate horizontally, fine. If not, then you have to go vertical, right? And then see if there are ways of also clubbing things. Like sometimes you physically segregate them but visually you don't, right? Or sometimes it is both ways, visual and physical segregation. So that would be my idea of trial and error of a complex program or a complex user group. I think if Snehal can add to it.
I don't know. I was just thinking when I was thinking of when you put the question, I was thinking of a program of that kind, and I was thinking of Sejima's program. Where I don't think that there is a very clear understanding of what happens in that place, and she actually goes on to define it and does it very differently in the manner that she says that there are controlled spaces, there are nebulous spaces, there are open spaces. Define the program, she doesn't define the user, but she defines maybe the nature of things that architecture has. And it has the ground, it has the slope, it has. So I guess it might be interesting to look at architecture not necessarily through program personally, because I feel that when architecture is looked through program, it looks through maybe uh, a program. If the architect tries to say, what should this building be for me to experiment, I take a very selfish position as an architect. And then I say that if I were to look at it and what is the chance is it going to offer to me, and then I take off, and then I can create probably connections of dots, as Sandeep was saying, but not necessarily programmatic, but different ways of looking at it. Then it can open up a different idea. Sometimes I might even allow a process to drive me to do things. So I'm not responsible. Process, and that process is bringing this out. So this is my answer. So it absolves me of taking the responsibility of an action. which is what happens to many that do computational understanding of architecture. They kind of design a system. That system will bring out a result, and then you say, I have an architecture which is emerging of what I think is important, and here I get an answer. So you can take those kind of positions also. So I think we don't necessarily have to worry programmatically so much, I feel, because it might be interesting to go beyond programs and look at architecture, because all the architecture that we value today have lost their programs, and we don't know what they were used for, you know. So we always wonder कि क्या करते थे यहाँ पे लोग, इतना अच्छा बनाया है, यहाँ पे क्या करते थे. So I think the idea can be beyond the program. The idea can be pure in that sense. So you can let it be beyond the program, just geometry, just something that of a method. So it can be various things that you may want to try out at that time. So depending on what you are engaged in, which is a very important thing for a student, engaged in something, either reading, doing something, you know, going and cleaning your neighborhood, because that will give you something else. Something else will give you something beyond architectural project searching to find that मेरा project किस पे मैं base करूँ. I think you will get a unique if you don't base it on anything. You kind of base it on things that you are preoccupied with doing beyond. Then I think you will get something which is different.
Thank you, ma'am. Heading towards our last and the 10th and the last question is architecture is this question is directed to Snehal ma'am. Uh, so architecture is often mistaken as a work that can be done by anyone. So what do you think studying architecture makes us unique?
Architecture, just
Yes, ma'am. Should I repeat it?
just repeat. Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. I'll repeat it. Ar- Architecture is often mistaken as work that can be done by anyone. What do you think studying architecture makes us unique?
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that I believe studying architecture does is opens the world for you to do anything else. Okay. Just as much as others do architecture, you will be able to do furniture, you will be able to do music, you will be able to do maybe gardening, better rotis. So your worldview, if you allow, will be so much more that it will let you do more, because architecture allows you to deal with one everyday and also the special day. And that is why architecture, because it allows you to deal with the everyday of somebody, but it also allows you to create possibilities for that special day. So in a space and I imagine two people sharing a nice moment, then I can do that. Yeah. So it's create which is full of potential and which is so fantastic. So depending on all that I can do and all that I can happen is what I can let my architecture do. I think also architecture can be done by many. Yes, architecture could be done by many. If I say that somebody is driven by poetry or somebody is driven by some of the higher higher callings that people, architecture can be done by them, because that is what we hope to address in architecture, is to be able to. But I do need to know technology, some way of putting the building together. Like for instance, I have this person working for me. He was my site manager for many years and architecture, because he has a mind that is alert, and he has a mind that really really cares. He has a mind that his hands are active. He does things with them. And if I'm sure when he goes back to his village, he does his architecture. Goes from here, he discusses with me, and then he goes back and he does things. So I don't think that in that sense we are unique. Can become unique because we are open to many things that we can do and we can hope to do. That so as much as architecture learning allows you to work with your hands, to work with your mind, to work with your heart, and if anybody else can do that and can learn the art of making buildings, I don't think there's a problem.
Thank you, ma'am.
Because I'm sure my forefathers were not architects.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you for some of the great buildings that were made in poles, maybe they were not made by architects. They might have been made by the salats, the mistris, who understood some basic mathematics, and they could make a house. So something like that, which is very beautiful and we cherish, can be made by an architect. So I guess it's possible.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I hope it answers.
Now I would like to
I'm
open.
sure it's not satisfactory.
No, ma'am, it is satisfying. We are getting some broader perspectives on the same thing. I would also like, if
good.
anybody in the audience would like to question something or any questions from the audience, please.
I think they are all very tired.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Not us. I think the students are. We are fine. I'm sure Poonam and Sandeep and I can go on.
We are used to talking.
We are used to talking. Seems like everybody is very tired.
Okay, sir.
We shall keep, if there are any questions, we are very much here to answer. So do tell them to get back.
Yes, ma'am. So with this, I would like to extend my thanks to everyone. I would like to extend my thanks to everyone present here, and
really
especially
nice.
our speakers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us talk.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I went through a lot.
Thank you,
Siddharth.
ma'am.
One of my old presentations. Thank you much.
And we are very grateful also that you have taken the time to prepare and spend evening with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you for every lovely audience. It was our first meeting, so hope to be come with more.
Yeah, we look forward to more such sessions.
Yes,
Yeah, and topics,
sure,
new panelists. Yeah.
Yes, we must.
Thank you.
Bye. I think it was really nice. I hope you get panel is
Bye
organized.
bye. Thank you.
Next week, we will attend. We shall be questioned.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good initiative.
Thank you. Bye bye, ma'am. Bye bye, sir.
Who's going
Thank
to go
you.
first? Bye.
Bye,
See you.
Siddharth. Bye, everyone.
I
Yeah.
think,
ma'am.
bye,
Bye bye,
bye,
Snail.
bye, Sandeep.
Bye, Snail. Bye, Cindy.
Bye, Poonam.
Siddharth.
Bye.
Nice hearing everybody.
Where?